A video game studio always has this one game series that never changes its formula no matter what, every new part having the same structure. But at some point, the same studio releases a new part of a game that completely breaks its original formula. So as usual, I'm going to be talking about those games to see how breaking the formula actually affected their series. Well, let's start with a classic, the Assassin's Creed series. Now, for over 10 years, Assassin's Creed had a simple formula that they abused by releasing a game every year. You're an Abstergo test subject or a worker in future games, entering the Animus, and just become an assassin where your mission is to stop the Templars. And the franchise identity was just stealth assassinations, parkour, counter-based combat, dense historical cities, and linear progression. Just the simple Assassin's Creed formula that most of us love, even though Unity and Syndicate fucked that up pretty badly. But in 2017, a major change happened. Ubisoft decided to make their next Assassin's Creed game an open-world RPG. That game is AC Origins, and Ubisoft changed everything about Assassin's Creed with it. Enemies now have levels, so you need to level up to defeat certain enemies. Loot have rarities now. Parkour is almost gone, and the whole game is just built around grinding. Now, why would they change the formula, you may ask? They changed it because by that point, many players felt Assassin's Creed became repetitive, because now the games didn't have anything unique about them and they just got worse every game. And also games like The Witcher 3 Wild Hunt and these new RPG games that came out and became successful changed the industry. And Ubisoft saw how successful giant RPGs were and wanted their own version. I know, shocker. So and then Ubisoft paused the franchise for a bit, redesigned it, and turned Assassin's Creed into an RPG-focused series. Now, was that a good thing for the series? No, it was not. It was completely shit. I mean, yeah, Assassin's Creed Origins, you may accept it a little. Then you have Spartans and Vikings. That game was ass. I'm tired of grinding just to play one level, then grind again for 40 more hours. I'm tired of this. Then after the RPG trilogy, Mirage came out, which was a linear game, finally, for some reason. And it was a good game, to be honest. I really liked it, and the DLC was even better. It had a better story, in my opinion. After that, they got back to the RPG series with Assassin's Creed Shadows, which I didn't play, unfortunately, or fortunately. I've seen mixed reviews ever since the game came out. And now, if you're following the Assassin's Creed news, Assassin's Creed Hexe, a new linear game, is going to come out. I really don't know what Ubisoft are doing. It's like they're going through an identity crisis. Anyways, that's how Assassin's Creed broke the formula and came back to it. I'm not sure what's happening with Assassin's Creed, to be honest. Now let's talk about a series that I recently got into, which is Resident Evil. I know, I'm super late, but that's not the point. But surprisingly to me, Resident Evil actually broke the formula more than once. Resident Evil is a horror game series created by Capcom, and it started in 1996. It played a huge part in defining the survival horror genre. Resident Evil's core is about biological outbreaks, mutated creatures and zombies, survival horror, and narrow corridors. And the main staple of the game was one company, Umbrella Corporation, a giant pharmaceutical corporation secretly creating dangerous bioweapons and viruses. And most Resident Evil games at that time were following characters who were either trying to stop or survive the outbreak. It became famous for creepy atmosphere, the tension, how managing your inventory is really important, solving puzzles, and creepy monsters. Gameplay-wise, the game was all about fixed camera angles, tank controls, slow pacing, limited ammo, and feeling weak and vulnerable most of the time. So after 6 games with the same formula, Capcom decided to change it. That was with Resident Evil 4. The game that was loved by everybody. You see, with Resident Evil 4, the game shifted into action horror. Capcom changed fixed cameras into over-the-shoulder camera, the slow movement became faster, survival focus became action focus, and horror tension became cinematic intensity. You basically become much more capable with the gameplay rather than trying to survive all of the time. And the reason why Capcom changed the formula was by the early 2000s, they felt like the original formula was becoming repetitive and outdated, and the gaming scene back then was also becoming more action-focused, faster-paced, and even more cinematic. So Capcom just made this huge change just to keep the series relevant. And crazy enough, Resident Evil changed gaming forever. The over-the-shoulder camera style influenced, a ton of third-person shooters. Now after Resident Evil 4, Resident Evil 5 came out and it had a bit more action in it. The game now focused heavily on co-op gameplay and shooting, bigger action sequences, and more weapon variety. Now with the co-op, you could play Resident Evil with your friend or just play with the shitty AI that encourages you to kill yourself. Now if you compare this game to the older Resident Evil games, now you have more ammo, stronger weapons, another partner beside you, and more open combat encounters. Now with this game, the scary atmosphere actually weakened because now now you can't really feel helpless anymore. I mean, that is if you played with your friend. If you played with the shitty AI, Shiva's gonna make you feel helpless and you're gonna hate yourself so much that you wanna yank the PS3, then gouge your eyes out. Now, Resident Evil had co-op because just like Resident Evil 4 at the time, online multiplayer and co-op games were exploding in popularity. And it actually worked pretty well for them. Resident Evil 5 became one of Capcom's best-selling games. But the original series fans started to feel that the series was drifting too far away from its roots. Now, if you thought that Resident Evil 5 wasn't scary and was just about action, well, let me introduce you to Resident Evil 6. I mean, look at this. What the fuck is this? How did we go from this and this to that? I don't get it. That's not action horror at all. That is just action. This game had multiple campaigns, giant cinematic sequences, non-stop action, huge explosions, vehicle chases, martial arts combat, and military shooter style gameplay. Oh my god, man, this game was a mess. You know, it was a huge reason why I didn't post a video for like 4 weeks. I've been trying to finish this game. It took me 20 hours. First campaign was like, oh yeah, that's nice, cool gameplay, mid-story, whatever. Then you have to do that 3 more times doing the same sequence over and over again. Anyways, enough rant. Resident Evil 6 now barely resembled classic Resident Evil anymore. Instead, it was just action-packed. You could slide on the ground, dive while shooting, fighting huge armies of infected, constantly moving through explosive set pieces. This is Call of Duty at this point. Now, initially, Resident Evil 6 sold well, but many fans and critics felt like the identity of Resident Evil was lost, horror became secondary, and the game was just bloated and unfocused. I mean, I thought it wouldn't be that bad, and I still had that same idea with the first campaign, then let's just go to the next game. After Resident Evil 6, Capcom realized that Resident Evil had drifted too far into action, so Resident Evil 7 became a soft reboot for the franchise, and it also became first person. Now the game is again a smaller, more personal setting, slower pacing, stronger horror focus, and less action spectacle. Instead of fighting giant armies, you were trapped inside the Baker family estate. With this game, this was Capcom finally moving back toward horror. Compared to Resident Evil 5 and 6, there was less ammo, fewer enemies, slower exploration, and stronger atmosphere. The fear now came from the tension, sound design, limited resources, and being trapped. Even though it was first person, it was spiritually closer to the older games than Resident Evil 6 or 5. Now, why did Capcom change the formula again? And it was several reasons actually. Fans criticized Resident Evil 6 so heavily, horror games became more popular again, and Capcom just simply wanted Resident Evil to feel scary again. And the game actually succeeded and revived the series, you could say. Then Resident Evil Village dropped. And it did change, but it didn't fully abandon Resident Evil 7's horror style. It just mixed it with Resident Evil 4 style action. So we're back to some action, but the good one. So now, Village has more combat, bigger environments, more weapons, faster pacing, and larger enemy encounters while still keeping its horror atmosphere, tension, and survival mechanics. Now, why did Capcom change again? It changed because they realized something important. Pure horror limits gameplay variety, and pure action loses Resident Evil identity. So they just managed to balance them both. And their new Resident Evil engine, it allowed more realistic graphics, better lighting, more detailed environments, stronger horror atmosphere, and smoother gameplay. And many people consider that this period was Capcom's comeback era after some rough years in the early 2010s. Now, I can't talk too much about Resident Evil 9 because I didn't play it or I don't know anything about it to avoid spoilers and stuff, but I think it's like Resident Evil 2 and 4 remake with Resident Evil 7 and Village together. I'm not sure, but it merged something. That's all I know. And actually, before ending this, I have a friend who's really into the Resident Evil games. Like, he's a huge fan of them. So let's ask him, what does he think of the formula changes throughout the years? Okay, so this is Keelan, my mega Resident Evil fan that I told you about. Keelan, say hi to my viewers.
Hello, viewers. Hello.
Didn't have to say it like that, but so Keelan, since you're a big Resident Evil fan, I wanted to ask about your opinion on Capcom changing the formula multiple times throughout the years.
Well, in my opinion, what I think of when you're saying changing the formula is when that jump from Resident Evil 3 being mainly survival horror to Resident Evil 4 being very action-packed and less horror. The reason I think
Whoa, why did you
where
speed up all of a sudden? How did you become so fast? Calm down, please. Keelan, calm down. What the fuck? Calm down, Keelan. Please calm down. Okay, thank you. I get it. Thank you. I understand. I don't understand, but I understand the message. Please, Keelan, thank you. That's um he isn't usually like that. I promise. I don't know what got into him today. Now let's talk about another series that had some noticeable changes throughout the years, and that is God of War. God of War is a PlayStation action-adventure franchise where a Spartan warrior named Kratos fights mythological creatures. The game was made by Santa Monica and it was released in 2005. Now everybody loved the first game and the second and the third, which made the series famous as one of PlayStation's biggest action franchises. The original games heavily focused on fast hack-and-slash combat, giant cinematic boss fights, brutal violence, combo systems, whatever that is, and Greek mythology. The games were loud, aggressive, and constantly escalating. You were always fighting something, and everything felt huge and chaotic. The camera was pulled far back so players could see lots of enemies chain giant combos and focus on spectacle combat. The combat was filled with fast attacks, juggling enemies, combo multipliers, and non-stop action. God of War was just about pure rage without any emotional storytelling. But after years of the same formula, the developers started feeling creatively stuck, because by the early 2010s, gaming audiences changed, cinematic storytelling became much bigger, players started demanding deeper characters and narratives, which led to the studio worrying about the formula becoming repetitive if they kept doing it the same forever. So then, in 2018, God of War came out. The game was a complete reinvention from the old games, both gameplay and story-wise. And the huge changes were that the fixed cinematic camera became over the shoulder, the fast arcade combat became slower and much heavier, and rather than pure action, the gameplay became story-driven. Now, rather than we get good old rage-focused Kratos, now we have an older, calmer Kratos. The entire tone basically became more emotional and grounded. Rather than the good old hack-and-slash and fast combat, the combat became slower and more strategic and heavier and more immersive. And Kratos' new weapon, the Leviathan Axe, was designed to feel heavy and impactful. And the biggest shift, not even the gameplay, was the storytelling. The older games focused mainly on revenge and destruction, while the newer games focus much more on relationships, character growth, emotions, parenting, and even consequences, turning Kratos from a symbol of rage to a much deeper character. Now all of that changed because Santa Monica Studio wanted the franchise to become more mature. The developers wanted stronger emotional storytelling, modern cinematic design, deeper gameplay systems, and a fresh identity for the series. And then God of War Ragnarok comes out and it continues the newer formula instead of reinventing it again, expanding the story scale, the combat options, exploration, cinematic presentation, while also keeping the emotional and grounded style introduced in God of War 2018. But to be honest, in my opinion, I feel like the story of God of War 2018 was much better than Ragnarok. And pretty much, the change was loved by everybody, even introducing new fans to the series. Such a weird shift to be honest, but if it works, it works. And now last but not least, we're talking about the Yakuza franchise, finally. Now this game case is a bit weird because it had two formula changes, one that still didn't drop and the other isn't that much of a change but also a change, but I'm going to be talking about them. First of all, Yakuza is a Japanese series created by RGG or Ryuga Gotoku, published by Sega. The first game releasing in 2005, the story was heavy for its time and the combat was insane for a PS2 game. Ever since the first game, the game focused on beat-em-up combat, real-time fighting, exploration, crime storytelling, side activities, and minigames, and awesome music. I know that doesn't have any relation to the gameplay, but Yakuza's music is just fucking insane. But it kept the same formula for a long time actually. They had Yakuza 1 through 5 in like 7 years and they had spin-offs in between too. Then Yakuza 0 released, the prequel to the first one, and which you could say popularized the game in the West a bit. The game was no different from the previous games, but it got even better now since it's the first PS4 Yakuza game, I think. And people really loved it, which made RGG create a remake for the first game, which is Yakuza Kiwami. But to be honest, it just feels like an expansion pack to Yakuza 0. It has Yakuza 1's story, but the same gameplay as Yakuza 0. There was not that much difference, only one new fighting style. But Yakuza's known for doing that, so what can we do? After Kiwami 1, Yakuza 6 released and then Kiwami 2 released the year after. And if you think that Kiwami 2 was just Yakuza 6, it was actually a bit better because Yakuza 6 was their first game on their new engine, the Dragon engine. So Yakuza 6 had so many problems. But Kiwami 2 kinda improved a bit, but not that much really. Like I said, the game was about punching groups of enemies, using environmental objects as weapons, chain combos, and switching fighting styles. But with Yakuza 6 being Kiryu's supposedly last game, the developers wanted to change things up with the Yakuza 7 where a new protagonist shows up. You know, since a new protagonist, a fresh start and stuff, the game became turn-based RPG. Series changed into party-based combat, RPG classes and jobs, special abilities, and more traditional JRPG mechanics. This is why I said they changed the formula, but not that much, because even though the gameplay changed, the franchise still kept the emotional storytelling, the crazy side content, the humor, the crime drama, and the detailed city exploration. So it still felt like Yakuza despite the gameplay overhaul. Now the combat change sided the fans a bit. Some people hated it, some people liked it, and some people were just neutral about it, just like me. I enjoy playing the turn-based combat, but I prefer playing using the beat-em-up combat system. Even though the games, like the main games, were now turn-based, there are some games that weren't turn-based, like Pirate Yakuza in Hawaii, like a Dragon Gaiden, Judgment, Lost Judgment. These all are spin-offs that still kept the beat-em-up combat. But now I'd like to talk about the big formula break that's about to happen with Stranger Than Heaven, the greatest game of all time. Now, with all the bullshit that was happening with RGG last year and Yakuza Kiwami 3 and the shitty-ass castings and the horrible people they got on the project, almost everybody lost hope in the series because the game was half-assed and nobody really liked it or gave it that much attention. Stranger Than Heaven was still announced, but nobody gave a shit at that point. But then the trailers came out and everybody went crazy. I mean, Snoop Dogg is in an RGG game. What do you think people will do? Anyways, with this game, everything pretty much changed. First of all, what is Stranger Than Heaven about? Stranger Than Heaven is about the creation of the Tojo clan. That's right, the clan that Kiryu was in the first couple of games. And we play as Makoto Daito, founder of the Tojo clan, throughout like 5 different years. And if you saw the trailer alone shows you how different this game is going to be than our normal Yakuza games. The lighting looks insane and there are ton of new famous celebrities on this game. You got Snoop Dogg and his son, you got Ado, even though she made a song for Lost Judgment, you got Satoshi and Tori Kelly. What the fuck is happening? And the combat is going to be different too. From what I understood, it's going to be using the triggers rather than our good old button. The game will be more brutal. There will be new minigames, new side content, new mechanics, and hopefully no reused animations. It looks like Stranger Than Heaven is going to be the most brutal game RGG has gave us so far. And honestly, I can't wait to play it and give you my review. Get off my console off the screen, man. I'll find a way to play it, don't you worry. I will find a way to play it. So yeah, I really can't wait for Stranger Than Heaven because it finally feels like something new in the Yakuza franchise. So these were some franchises that changed the formula and stuff. It was just like every other video, fun to check them out. I always like doing these stuff and yeah. Hope you enjoyed the video. If you enjoyed it, please like and subscribe. I'd really appreciate it a lot. And what the fuck, Gilan? How are you still in my video? Bro, get out. I get it. Please, enough, Gilan, please.